Thank you, everybody. So we're going to get right into it. As I mentioned, I'm Brent Mauti. There we go. CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and Principal at Turner Fleischer Architects. And I've got a myriad of architectural licenses by my name, practicing since '05.
I'm the manager of the digital practice department. We do a lot of cool stuff. We have software developers in-house, BIM coordinators, laser scanning, model fabrication, anything design technology, that's what we do.
All right, so we're a practice of 50 years experience, about 230 plus employees scattered across our Toronto office with a couple in our satellite office in Halifax. We like to have fun. We like to give back to the community. We like to have events. We like to have parties. We do all that cool stuff, but we also like to do a lot of work. So part of our work is learning, and we're a learning organization infused with technology. We want to constantly better ourselves as we're going through everything that we're trying to achieve. The work we do, we work through three main services: architecture, interior design, and experiential graphic design. And we take those services and we scatter them across these various sectors. So we can do any one or more of our services within any one or many of these sectors. And they're all just fun projects to be a part of. So that's us, Turner Fleischer. What we're going to focus on today is our pathway towards digital twin that started with the definition of our information and how we structured our information, how we end up using our information, our data, and then realizing that into a digital twin.
Thank you, Brent. So we're going to start with defining our data. So we had to ask ourselves, what data are we even pulling? What data do we have available? And in a studio, it can be really overwhelming, the amount of different data sources that you have, right? Because data is just information. And you hear this talk, organize your data so you can leverage AI. So that is really the first step, and it was the first step for us on our data journey. And so we focused on a few data sources. We have our SQL database. If you don't know what that is, it is basically structured, relationship-driven data, usually in the format of tables. We have our ERP, which is Uninet in our case. That's storing a lot of the project financial data, the employee data. Of course, we have our BIM Revit files, which store all sorts of design data. Then we put those files in ACC. Now you've got even more data added through the collaborative platform. M365, we store purchase orders on there. We have custom apps in-house. That has its own data. And of course, IoT sensors to assist in facility management, which really ties into what we do later with the digital twin.
So how do we visualize it? That's the next question we had to solve. So we took all of our information and we said, what's a binding mechanism that I can pull them all together? And it all comes together in the world of Power BI. So I'm able to take any and all data sources and find various mechanisms to visualize them interactively and binding the data together. And I'll tell you, part of my career in the last 11 years now, since the inception of Power BI, was figuring out how to hook data from various locations. So once I've done that, what do I do? What do I want to achieve with my information? So I look to optimize workflows. Any type of project workflow, piece of data, optimize it. Analyze it for financial information from our projects. Track usage of software. It costs a lot of money to buy all that stuff, right? Examine support engagement, or leveraging our resources effectively, and then take that information, and the point of this presentation is how we got to the world of the digital twin. So we have all of these people in our studio. Everybody makes data, and it's just maddening how much information comes from everybody all the time, all day long, probably unstructured to start, and how do we make it structured? Well, we've got three operational departments to achieve that: knowledge management, finance, and digital practice, which Artyom leads. As Chief Technology Officer, technology weaves through every one of these every one of these departments. Knowledge is everything we touch. How do we capture, retain, and leverage it? And then working with the Director of Finance has been absolutely phenomenal. And why is that? Because a lot of my data comes from our ERP, our Enterprise Resource Planning tool, which Artyom stated was Uninet. So we're going to go through from ERP to applications and say what we've done with some of the data. So first from the ERP, what do we use from our ERP? So I've got project info. How many times have people written emails saying project number, project name, project manager over and over and over, spelled differently, making inconsistent, unstructured data? It's all sitting right there. We have all the data entered in our timesheets. Who spent time on what project and when and why? How much expenses were incurred? Who are our consultants? The ERP calls it a vendor, but who are we working with, right? All that data and information. What have we purchased and why? Who are our clients, right? How many times have you spelled the client name differently? The client contact is wrong, the address info. And then the work of our project accountants to ensure everything is in synergistically entered inside the ERP. So what do I want? All of it. All of that is data that I could grab, I could leverage, and I can use for some purpose. At this point, let's say I didn't know what the purpose was. I got to make sure I can touch all that data. So where is it all? Enter the Director of Finance. She sits down with me, goes through the ERP, and identifies all the information housed in various SQL tables throughout the system. How do I get it out of there? Well, she's a SQL wizard. She knows what to connect and why and how to hook one table to another table and provide me the information I'm trying to pull out. She taught me so much about SQL, it's crazy. And that ability to bind anything to any target is all possible. How do I get to Power BI from that? Well, I have API hooks. Power BI can connect to absolutely everything. So using the same SQL definitions, calling on views that have been defined in the ERP, plugging it into a SQL-defined API query, and leveraging the output into Power BI.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about what finance was doing in the ERP. Let's talk about forms that digital practice was responsible for. So we noticed that when you're working, there's a lot of, like Brent said, data that just repeats and repeats, project numbers, who's on the project. And so we translated that information into these web forms, which were built in-house for things like requesting a drawing review, right? So you're going to put a stamp on that drawing. You definitely want to make sure that there's been a thorough review process by all parties. And oftentimes, PDFs get lost in emails. And it's not really structured data where we can analyze, like, how many reviews do we have left? How many reviews have we done historically? Who's been reviewing the drawings? So simple requests like that. And as we started building these forms, there were really two types, practice forms and operation forms. And we first started doing this in 2022. And the very first one was our automated BIM execution plan. And really that was just simplifying it so you're not repeating all of that information in a Word document. I know that's how a lot of these BIM execution plans are made. But if you think about it, there's all this data stored in the ERP. I just want to bring that into the BIM execution plan right away. And this helped us standardize a lot of the fields and make sure that the Word documents don't go rogue. And it's just a simple, this is an overview where you can see kind of all of the active BXPs, and you can go in and dive into them more. And then we started realizing, when someone emails about a laser scan or a model fab, where's the project file? What's the address of the project? We keep having to ask the same questions. So just put it on a form. Now they have to provide that information. And this list just kept growing and growing and growing. Write-off requests. And then we got into operations. We have the learning program that Brent mentioned, accreditations for that learning, submitting expenses. When accounting sees it, how do they know that it's been approved? Request for fee proposal. This was a really important one because fee proposals, go out to our clients and they get signed and they really drive the business. So if there's any mistakes here, that's really going to impact us, right? If that contract isn't reviewed. And again, it was just lost in emails. Where was the oversight? And so this consolidates it into a single database that allows us to then visualize it, which is what Brent's going to show us. So moving along, we just kept finding more and more use cases, consultant invoices, and we just kept developing them. But basically anything that has a review process or data that we want to standardize and make sure that it gets captured and isn't lost. In the panel earlier, when they were talking about digital twins, they mentioned how the data needs to be usable, right? If it's just, and again, the culprits, spreadsheets, PDFs, emails, that's not data that you can utilize, right?
So generating structured information gives us a foundation for the next sections we're going to show. But these just kept coming out. TF community reimbursement, right? It was, how do I get approval to do the right to conquer cancer or to do any type of event of that nature? So it's just capturing the information in a structured manner. All right, so now we're going into dashboards. So took the data into Power BI. So I have a structured base right now. I went through the process of designing and creating dashboards for interactivity with the data. So this is showing me our purchase order system, allowing me to analyze certain types of POs going into IT-based, M365, Autodesk purchases, major hardware purchases, looking at trends over time, understanding when we're spending, why we're spending, what's been approved or not, all pulling from one structured database, allowing me to make insights and focus and drill down. This is our fee proposal process that Artyom honed in on. So that form lets me now do this. So when was a request put in? How long does it take to review? What's all the information about it? What status is it in? How long has it taken to be reviewed? And do I need to take any further actions on it? Do I need to nudge a couple project managers or managers to review it? Does it need a final stamping? Is the partner, are we slacking on that final review? All of it's there. And even at that bottom part, messages and rejection reasons, everything's lost. So if you get an email saying, no, I'm not going to let you proceed. Well, that's great. Where does that data go? And how do you access that? Why weren't you allowed? And how does that can contract in the future? So it's all now at my fingertips in a structured manner, bound by the project number. That project number comes so important. This is analyzing the financial behavior of my project. So I'm going to focus to myself as project manager, and these are the projects that I'm in charge of. And I can drill down to any project, pulling data straight from the ERP, who charged to what and when, how much of my budget have they incurred at this very moment in time, not waiting for a monthly review or an understanding of what happened. So I get all the data at my fingertips. Applications we purchase, so software usage. Hey, can you buy me a Revit add-in? Yeah, maybe. Do we need it? Do we have one that's similar? One time, and I think Apurva's in here, when we wanted the extra CTC license. She remembers that. It's like, yeah, we're going to buy it. I'm like, okay. And I went on this report here, and I said, yeah, nobody uses it but 2 people in our group, and you're both using it at the same time, so coordinate. Now we've bought a lot more, but that was like 3 years ago when the question was. But it gave me the insight instantly, looking at user journal files that are pulled in from Revit and leveraged and timestamped in SQL. Model stats, Revit health. So we're able to just grab data again from from the Revit models, pulled into SQL database, analyzing models based on project number and relative to standards that we've set, comparing elements within and reporting back on the behavior of the model. It's reactive, not proactive. So it's looking back, saying, hey, we made mistakes, let's do better next time. Artyom spearheading Guardian implementation, which is proactive, trying to prevent these errors from happening before they would ever reach a report like this. All right, applications.
This is our weekly schedule app. So this is something that our software developers would have built. It's very simple. On the top, you have the names. On the left, you have the projects. And then at the very top, you would have various filters. So you could filter down to all the people on your team and assign the hours that they'll be working on next week. So this is the kind of data that it wasn't possible to store in our ERP, and so we needed to build a custom app and a custom interface for people to be able to provide this data that then we can connect to the rest of our systems.
So just while we wait for the next slide, just one more thing to add. Everything top and everything left is all pulled from the ERP. So it's all automatic, and it literally is giving a focus point to just enter those numbers. And that's something that was chaos when I started. Everyone had a spreadsheet, and then it was, well, let's normalize the spreadsheet. And then we had a massive spreadsheet accessed by 50 people, and now it's all in an app, and it's just a beautiful world. It's right now, it tracks to the coming week, but then it's all being funneled into that target financial performance. So what are we budgeting versus now what's my actual? So the budgeted is forward looking, then that financial plan, Power BI gives me what did we actually do, and then I can compare plan to actual and see how good we were. Oh, it's me, realizing our digital twin. Okay, so we have all this data, we have this foundation, it's structured, it's awesome. I'm happy as a CTO. Now I want to get into the world of digital twin. When I spoke up here in the panel this morning, so what is a digital twin? So in our world, a digital twin is a virtual representation of a physical object or system that enables real-time monitoring, analysis, and simulation, and this is the important part, to optimize performance and facilitate decision-making. If it's not doing this in our world, it's not a digital twin. All right, so the digital twin makes up BIM data, spatial data, and asset data. And I remember when I'm gonna age myself here and make the grays worthy. When I started, everything goes into BIM, is what I heard in 2003 when AIA was talking about BIM. So not true. BIM is just one speck of data in the world of asset management. It's a very big, massive, important speck, but it nonetheless is just a tiny speck of data. So again, we're pulling all this data. We're developing a project. So this example here is our world. This is our studio. We were the client, we were the designer, and we were sort of the general contractor too, but we had a GC, but we were all over them. So this was our design, got into the model, and then we look at now what we did with the digital twin. So we went through this design, construct, and now are in operate, and we had to define what we want to do and why. So our world with a digital practice department, it's one thing that's different aside from our software developers is our facility manager. So when we were setting up our operational teams, we put FM inside DPD, digital practice, in order for us to leverage the technological side of running our studio. So as we bring up these assets here, so the first thing I said to him, what's something that irks you? So we got back from the pandemic in 2021. The facility manager came in. I said, okay, so how are you managing our space? Let's look around our brand new renovated studio. And he said, the generator. I'm like, that's not even in the building, man, but it's out there. He said, the bike racks. I'm like, okay, another thing that's outside. So as we bring these up now, I asked them, okay, is there something that's inside? We have a green wall that needs a lot of asset management. So if we keep going through these, we have a vending machine that has to be managed, 3D printers, and our laser cutter in our model studio, actual printers that I want to turn into a coffee shop, we can get rid of them. We have swag. And I'm like, you're managing swag? I'm like, yep, swag, stationery. I said, that's not in the BIM, that's nowhere near the BIM. My coffee machine, all of our coffee machines, when that goes down, we cry. Then safety, fire extinguishers. So you can see the things we're going through here. Gym equipment. We have a gym space and we have gym equipment. The big monitor on the wall, the water fill stations. And I kept saying to the FM manager, like, these aren't things we normally do. The living trees inside. Our smart boards that are all touchscreen, when those go down, it's like, hey, Brent, CTO, fix it. I'm not a repairer, I don't know. We have operable windows that tint when the sun shines on them. Well, guess what? Sometimes they don't tint. Guess who yells and gets yelled at? We have our IoT sensors that we've placed all across the studio. And then the last one is our sit-stand desks. So all of these assets, I said, okay, Now I've got a mission and a purpose for a digital twin. And when you think of going through the BIM process, we're architecture practice, interior designers, we designed, we constructed, now we've operated this, we've occupied our space, and all of these things are not the things I specified or made or took particular focus on as architect. Right? They're not floor finishes, et cetera. They're not life safety diagrams. It's specific things that our facility manager has to deal with. And what are the issues? Things are broken, something needs repair, something's missing, something doesn't know where its location is, what parts to be replaced, what do we have in our inventory, something's dirty, it needs some cleaning, it's too cold, too dry, too hot, how does it work, and where are we seating? These are all the types of things that the facility manager has to interact with or respond to when dealing with all of those assets throughout the studio. And sitting with the facility manager as the owner-operator, we're able to then understand the routines around these and then say, okay, now what do we want to do in the world of digital twin? So in the world of digital twin, now we'll take all of these assets, pull them all together, and we said, now let's focus on 3 things. Because our CEO said to me, okay, Brent, well, nice CTO, slow down. There's so much we can do now in the world of digital twin. You can drink the Kool-Aid and go through so much. We said, let's focus on 3 things: spaces, wellness, and assets. And if we can do something with those, we'll have achieved our digital twin goal. So next, it's how do we digital twin?
Okay. We had to pick the right tool for the job, right? So there's a lot of market options, and we had to explore them all. There's cost to consider, there's ease of use, there's how's it going to connect with our existing systems, and ultimately we landed on Autodesk Tandem. We're in Revit, we're an architecture studio, that's not a surprise to anyone. It played really nicely with the existing BIM model that we had of our studio, since we were, the designers, the owners. And when you're at a smaller scale, it's free to use, right? So you can't beat free. And so there's just going to be a video kind of running, showcasing our model in Tandem and kind of clicking through some of the benefits of the platform. One of the things is, we talked about how you can't put absolutely everything in the BIM model. And so it links really nicely to inventory and asset information. It's already connecting to ACC/BIM360/ I have to call it Forma now. And so it's got that cloud integration. It can connect to IoT, which we already had the IoT sensors. And then you can build views with filters. So I remember one of the questions from the panels was, the client doesn't need all this data. Well, what you can do with these views is build a custom view of what your client actually needs to see in the digital twin. So looking at some of the spaces, just very practical, right? Desk management. We're in a hybrid studio, and we have to figure out who's desk sharing, who's hot desking, our teams sitting next to each other. And then there's also IT considerations. So the network switches, the data ports, filtering by managers, by occupants, all sorts of different ways to slice what really seems like simple data, just where do people sit? But ultimately, you need to know about that. So here we're going through the seating plan, again, by those different filters. So we've saved some views where it's color coding different parameters. So this one is by department. You can see logically we tried to set up the studio in a way where departments are sitting in the same areas. And when you click on one of those assets, because it's connected to our Revit model, we have all these custom parameters. So you can see all those parameters have a TF dash. That's for Turner Fleischer. We've added all of those parameters, and so we can get the manager of the person who's sitting there. We can get the station number, what computers are sitting at that desk. And then another way of looking at it is going to be by the network switch monitor, which we're going to get to. So this is something our IT department needs because we need to manage the loads of the network switches. And kind of a cool way of visualizing that is something called cluster view. So it's taking all of those assets and it's grouping them by a certain parameter. This is, again, a pretty straightforward application, but you can imagine this being used for any sort of parameter and a different way of visualizing it, not just in the floor plan or the 3D model that we're used to. And then going back to the overall desk view, you can see how easy it is to flip between these saved views. We can, again, click on any one of those and, again, drill down for those parameters.
So the next one is wellness. So from a wellness perspective, we wanted to deal with indoor air quality because there's so much we can do with wellness, and we said, okay, let's look at these IoT sensors and figure out what can actually be done with them. So we set up an internal design competition. We had about 6 teams saying this is how we want our sensors to be designed, and we went through this cycle, ended up with about 6 that all were pretty cool, so we kind of fused them all together, and we ended up with a solution, and we bought these sensors that can track all of these items. So these sensors, there are Arduino sensors that we purchased for like $15, $20 off of Amazon. Each sensor sends a ping of information for all of those items every 5 minutes. We have a MQTT listener server set up, MQTT listener set up on a Linux server that hears all of the pings, rationalizes them, and feeds them to Microsoft MS SQL and timestamps it. So now every 5 minutes we get a timestamping of our IoT sensor, which is awesome data that we can collect. If I said to you, now do something with it, you'd look at me and say, what do you want me to do with a SQL table that's full of whatever? And just as an FYI, the table is only about 1.5 MB, and we have data going back to 2021. So it's actually not huge data, which is cool. So instead of looking at SQL, I've got Power BI. So we're gonna let this video go through. So again, everything comes into Power BI, and this is actually a simple Power BI. I pointed to SQL, grab that table, and I can now filter by the sensor type, and I can see a history going back as long as I want. So because everything's captured in SQL. I can focus in on a singular space. So if something was happening, so my facility manager says, hey, what's the temperature in the front lobby? And look, it's a spike and then a drop. What's happening in the IT room? The IT room is like a little cubby hole that we have on the side, and they always say it's hot in there, and there's proof that, yeah, sometimes it is, right? So this data is all captured in the summer months. As I'm filtering through, again, I land on a space and I can filter, and that's cool. So we're going to look at particulate matter for a moment. So some sensors have the particulate matter function, and you can see you got highs and lows. But if I go back to 3 months here, 4 months I'm going to see a massive spike. And that's around like a July timeframe, forest fires Canada, everything coming in from Western Canada, and you can smell the campfire. And I said, man, I thought our building was sealed pretty well, and our sensors were telling us, no, do something about it. So what is an insight gained? We see that. Let's do some fixes. Is it weather stripping? Is it make sure the door closer closes? Because those automatic door closers, amazingly, don't always close the door. They need tweaking. So we discovered a lot of things, fixed them. But some people will say to me, this is way too complex. Enter my digital twin. So every IoT stream can be now plugged into the digital twin, bound by the space definitions that come from the Revit model through Tandem and exposed visually. And the field of the IoT is now bound by the space of Revit, and it's showing me hot spots of temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, CO2, etc. I can set threshold ranges that tell me what's good and what's bad, because one challenge we found is, hey, we've got $15 sensors. The sensor says it's 26, but really it's 24. All right, so the sensors aren't the most expensive. I don't really care what the temperature is. I care whether it's good or bad, and I want to see the trend of good or bad. So that's what we're tracking here. We've since got a new stream of sensors from Kytera that are like to the degree, because we're looking to be well certified. Those aren't in my digital twin yet, but this has given me an idea. And what did I learn from this? Just last August, I popped this thing open in the morning, and our main server room was bright red. So at 6 a.m., I said, uh-oh. Opened the door, and it was hot, air conditioner failure, had to get it fixed, but instantly saw the problem because this thing showed me there was an issue.
And boy, am I glad that our servers didn't get fried, because that would have been a huge issue. So how many people here have used Sortly? Anyone? Okay,
Man,
then
so cool.
this will be new to some people, maybe exciting. So Brent was mentioning how you really can't put everything into the BIM model, right? And what Tandem allows you to do is to link to other platforms like Sortly and SharePoint. So this is what Sortly looks like. It's a little bit like SharePoint, but it's specifically for inventory management. So taking a look at one of the things that we're managing on Sortly, we have that bike storage, and we hand out fobs so that people can store their bikes. Well, you're not going to model each one of those fobs and put it in the Revit file. That would be an insane LOD. And so instead, we track that in Sortly. But then documents, leverage the platforms that are best at dealing with that. So documents we keep in SharePoint. And so we can go to that exact same bike storage where on Sortly we're doing the fobs and put the how-to documents here. So you're getting all the relevant documentation to see how to use that fob. And so this is, again, a different sort of saved view where it's highlighting in blue BIM assets that have connections to these third-party platforms like Sortly and like SharePoint. And so here you can access a hyperlink from that cabinet, what's being stored in a cabinet. It could be swag, it could be office supplies. So here, maybe we're running out of t-shirts and our facility manager needs to order some more. And this is another 3D view. Instead of going from that bird's eye view, you can also explore in the first person view of the same thing. So navigating the studio. So, our facility manager doesn't have to be there for us to understand how do we deal with the green wall if it goes down, right? Who do we call? Who's the contact for that? So a lot of these have been really practical applications. And that's because we always asked our facility manager what would actually help your job. So we're not doing cool BIM things just for the sake of it. This was all driven by his requests and things that he actually uses day to day because he's the one who has to update that inventory in Sortly and update those documents in SharePoint to get the value out of them.
And just one quick note on the hyperlinks. If you're wondering who manages the hyperlinks, well, once it's set once, it never changes. So a strict folder structure in SharePoint, ensuring that the GUID is always the same, the GUID link is always the same. He manages the content within, so the inventory within Sortly, the files within SharePoint. The links never change because they're GUID based, so you can rename a folder if needed, but we never change the folders. And then therefore in Revit, that then goes through the digital twin, that information never has to change.
And here you can see the digital twin overlaid with an actual photo of the studio, and our BIM modelers did a pretty good job. And that's what it's about, right? For us, a digital twin, if there's no physical, then it's not a digital twin. It's about that relation between the two and about improving operational processes, being able to have IoT sensors for more proactive information.
So we're at the end now. We just have some closing slides here. So what have we used it for now that I've mentioned these servers? So the temperature balancing, the server room was a huge one, obviously, but I can look at the digital twin and understand where things are good and bad, what meeting rooms are high or not. The coffee machine, one time it just wasn't spitting out the espresso I wanted and I couldn't figure out how to change the grind. 2 clicks, found the manual. Treadmill setting, hey Brent, the gym equipment's not working. Well, I'm a CTO in a design practice. I don't know how to manage gym equipment, but we're a couple clicks away from whatever you need to know about it. Connect your phone via Bluetooth to whatever machine we have there. Seat assignment, as Artyom showed, so who's sitting where and why, and can we shift people around? Where's a flex desk? Can I take a project team from this location scattered and maybe put them somewhere for a month? And if we did that, what's the ramifications, etc. And then upcoming maintenance, I'll talk about that in a second. So what's next? Tandem we're working with Autodesk, and as they're advancing the platform, we're advancing the platform. So Tandem Connect lets us connect to other systems. So we've got our lighting control, security cameras, etc. And Tandem Connect will let us build binders to those other data sources that we may not have already connected to or that might be legacy. We've got system tracing. So if I had a really good mechanical model, I can see how my mechanical and electrical is getting from point A to point B. So that's something we haven't built yet for ours. Asset labeling is something that is now evolving. Before it was just space labels, but now in my views, we can include asset labels specifically. Maintenance scheduling. So we're leveraging the digital twin to say when something was maintained last and when its next maintenance is. And I'm so excited that Tandem's about to release digital twin notification. So when we're getting close to the date entered in here for the next one, I can now have my facility manager and anybody else I want triggered saying a maintenance is required shortly. Is it ready or not? So that's cool. So rock on a IT team back there. You guys rock, and I hope this all came through, and thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's give a round of applause.
Wow. I have never delivered it this way. So.
I can only imagine. I got to give you another round of applause. We feel like we should give you a kind of a conductor stick up there to be like, next slide, next slide. So well done. But does anybody have a question for the gentleman up here? And I'll be happy to walk around and give you the mic.
I'm glad you put your hand up, because I was going to pick on my old employee over there, but you can go first. Apurva, cue one up.
All right, let's keep it short and sweet, okay? Because we only have a couple minutes for questions, okay?
First, great presentation, amazing work. I've never seen something as comprehensive. I've always thought digital twins, there's like 3 types of digital twins. The static, the information, you've got that linked in a very nice way, by the way. The dynamic, where you can see information from sensors, and you've demonstrated that. Then they've got the analytical one that's kind of giving you warnings, and you can have, the basic is just setting thresholds.
Yep.
So you get a temperature sensor higher than what it should be. But then there is certain ones where it's actually monitoring mostly in mechanical equipment, or sometimes in the case where you've got occupancy, that there's a lot of people here, I've got to jack up the the AC so I think you've done a very good job in the first 2. The third one, is that in the works? That you've got some targets and what you want to see in terms of analytical and forward data that's not lagging, it's just forward-looking data?
Yeah, so you mean for occupancy specifically, or?
Like mechanical equipment
right,
might not be working as it should be, etc. Instead of, like, the example you said, you went to the server, you saw on the dashboard that temperature's up.
Yes.
That really should be a notification that you get at 4 a.m.
100%. So when notifications come out, we would be able to get that from our sensors, and just, it's time, right? If I was able to explore Tandem Connect a little deeper, then I could actually bind our digital twin to our HVAC controls. So then I would have 2 points, right? I'd have an IoT sensor saying to me there's a problem, and then our HVAC control through the digital twin saying there's a problem. So the more connectivity I get, the stronger. The other thing I want, like our security system. So a camera says there's movement. Well, where's the camera? And can I not see it in the digital twin? I see the image, but where is the actual camera to represent what I'm seeing from the image? So there's a couple of stories that I can dream up. Yeah. What do you got, Apurva? Come on. Yes.
Okay, let's go.
So she left us 2 years ago now, I think. So
it's been a while, and
yes,
it was really nice seeing this presentation after a long time. It was a really great presentation. I just have a question for the people, for this digital twin, the owner, the executor, the operation, it was all one. What would you have suggestions for the people who are not one? Like, they have got different contractors, different owners, and then different IoT devices, and everything is like different. How would they proceed, and how would you suggest that they can reach to this kind of product?
So I'll do,
For me, it's like defining the owner requirements. I think the hardest part is like getting the owner right. Like for us implementing, once we talked to the facility manager, sure, it was kind of new technology, but that wasn't really the hard part. I think in the industry, we're seeing like, this is a prototype so we can show our clients, but still they don't understand exactly how to leverage this. And that's where, like the other panel said, educating owners so that they see the ROI.
Yeah. Like this all started with us as the owner and giving ourselves the information we want. So if we show this to a client, it's, hey, listen, this is how we're running our space. We'll drop ideas of what's technologically possible, but we need the owner to say what they need to do. And when I look at this in AI is no different, right? AI, you've got all this data to do something, so what do you want to do with it? And I'm told, CTO, tell me what we're going to do, either a project or internally. No, what do we want to do? what's beneficial. And then once you can define a practical use case, do you have the data? Do you have the AI? Do you have the technology? And once it all lines up, you achieve it. It's like, even to your response, there's no reason an AI can't be there saying, hey, there's a red server room. I know we've got to do A, B, and C. That's actually easy. If I define A, B, and C, then AI, I'm good with that, right?
Very good. Thank you. This is really impressive. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your attention, everyone.
Round of applause.